Welcome to the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments Air Quality Video Series. In today's episode, Episode 3, Part 1, we will be discussing non-attainment status. Quick introduction, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Karl Dye, and I'm the President and CEO at Tri-City Development Council, or TRIDEC is our acronym. So we do regional economic development, we do federal lobbying, and our mission is really to diversify the economy and make sure we keep the economy growing and strong in the Tri-Cities.
What does it mean to become a non-attainment area, and what are the consequences?
You know, from our perspective, and I've lived in a couple of communities that were non-attainment areas regionally. So the first one was in Spokane, and at the time when they were a non-attainment area, essentially the region, and I'm not sure how they calculate it, if it's on an average daily basis or what the status is, but the EPA starts off with monitoring equipment, and then they monitor the air quality. And then over time, if the air quality doesn't meet the standard, you become a non-attainment zone. And so in Spokane, I know that led to vehicle monitoring. I want to say it was annual. So if you owned a vehicle in Spokane County, you had to go and pay for a test every year where they put a probe in your exhaust pipe and they run it through a diagnostic test on the engine to make sure that it meets the emission standards for the year of vehicle you are. And so from a consumer standpoint, from a citizen standpoint, it's just another level of regulatory environment that you have to go through. So I think for just our quality of life, if we became a non-attainment zone, I think it would definitely have a very negative effect for all of us. And, you know, it's one of those things where you don't really see the need for it. You know, I think from a citizen standpoint and from a consumer standpoint, if you know that something that you have to do or pay for is leading to something that you can see and understand and believe in, but non-attainment standards, other than if we go outside and the air smells different, or if you have asthma, it's harder to breathe, or these things that are kind of indicators physically for people, it's really hard to understand it. And so I think from our perspective, we're excited to work with Benton-Franklin Council of Governments and other agencies to just try to raise the awareness, because I think we're on the threshold of becoming a non-attainment zone. The other one was I used to live in Bonner County in North Idaho and was actually a county commissioner for a little bit of time. And we were also a non-attainment zone. And what that meant for the county was that we had a really strict dust control policy. And so for new road construction, for existing road construction, if it wasn't paved, the county had to pay a lot of money. They essentially had to raise taxes for everybody in the county, whether they lived under dirt road or not, to make sure that it didn't have dust, because we had to meet this federal standard. And so I think that's what I've learned locally in both those examples, other communities that I lived in, is that it's another level of a federal policy and regulation that local electeds have to make hard budget decisions on. And in some cases, even raise taxes or charge people for things like vehicle emission testing in Spokane. That is, it's just from a public policy point of view, it's really hard to get there and to get people to understand. So I think in general, it's just good for all of us. If we can do things to mitigate not becoming a non-attainment zone, it would be really, really good for all of us. Like, we can continue the great quality of life that we have here in the Tri-Cities.
Non-attainment is a technical term that simply means that an area has too much of a criteria air pollutant, and that area must clean up its emissions to reach or attain the official health-based limit for the pollutant. How does non-attainment impact local businesses, development, industries, and residents? What will happen?
Well, for all of us that have vehicles, our costs would go up, right? So, it's just like when fuel prices change. As consumers, we don't like to pay more for anything that we have today. Of course, with inflation and consumer goods, that we're going through that right now through cycles that we haven't seen in a long time. And this would be another example of that. We would, if we had to have our vehicles attested, we would have to pay for that. We would have to schedule it. We'd have to do it every year. So it takes time, it takes money, and those would be impacts on people, on businesses. Businesses that own fleets of trucks would have to do that. They're going to have to pass those costs along to the consumer. And so if you get something delivered from FedEx or Amazon or whomever, incrementally, your prices are going to go up. You're going to feel it in the long run, because it's going to be another cost center. It's going to add to that side of it. for us, where we work on recruiting industrial companies, which the Tri-Cities has a long history of industrial locating companies, because our community culturally understands the connection between producing goods and services and exporting them out of our community, create really good paying jobs for our citizens. But some of those industries may have air emissions, and so it takes it to a different level or standard for that. And for some of the projects, it could be really, really good for the Tri-Cities. It could be a great place to work, a good employer, a great community partner. They might not be able to locate here because of non-attainment status, and that it takes another level of the regulatory environment, or it increases their cost for treatment. That they're always going to treat it. They're always going to meet the standards, but this could be an additional layer that they have to pay for, and that may then make us non-competitive for that new employer. So it really could affect our ability to attract certain industries that would come in otherwise if we weren't in a non-attainment zone.
Non-attainment status can lead to strict regulations and impact local businesses and residents. How does non-attainment status impact local jurisdictions?
From a jurisdiction standpoint, I think that it's, while they may or may not play a role in the regulatory environment, they will play a role in all of the local jurisdictions have vehicles. So now it's going to add to their cost. It's going to add to their budgeting process, that they're going to have to budget more money to be able to go through this testing regime. I gave you the example before about the county. So, Benton County and Franklin County both do a great job of having paved roads, but where you have these agricultural bases for county roads that are outside of city limits, there's a lot of farm roads and others that are maintained by the county, but they're not paved. And so would the county have to invest in things like magnesium chloride and other dust control technologies and the equipment, the trucks to have to spray them? And so, from that aspect, there could be, again, additional increased costs, which when you're in a government agency, the costs have to be borne through taxes. And so the cost for all of us through our taxes with local jurisdictions could go up. And anytime that there's an increase, a budget increase, then local jurisdictions need to go through a public process to explain where it's from. Is it something that they choose to do or they have to comply with? This is something that you have to comply with. They don't have a choice. Elected officials that we vote for here at the city or county level, they have to comply with these federal regulations. That's just the way that it works. So it kind of takes that local decision-making authority out of our local jurisdiction's hands and kind of cedes it to the federal government, which we do in a lot of cases, but this would be another example of we don't have the local ability to make decisions that are right for our decisions. We have to comply with this law. And so that's the reason that we're all working on this together and trying to get the word out, is that it really is something, A, that nobody knows about, B, there's not a lot of awareness about it, but it could, if it happens, it could have a pretty big impact on all of us. So I really appreciate Council of Governments working on this series, and anything that we can do to help and partner with, we're really excited to do that, because it will be a lot more important if we are in a non-attainment zone. And then at that point in time, everybody's going to be going, oh my gosh, I didn't know anything about this. So anything we can do together right now to make sure that people do know about it and know about these are things that we'd have to comply with if it becomes, hopefully it'll give people a good reason to think about ways that they can mitigate or some of the ways that we can work together to be able to lower those emissions so we stay out of the non-attainment status.
Understanding non-attainment status helps us all work together to meet air quality standards and improve our environment. Thanks for watching. Up next is part 2 on understanding non-attainment status.